politics, protests, human rights, justice, equity, community. RaceAware.
As we continue our talk about women, let's focus now on early pioneers in politics. Today, we'll look at Barbara Jordan, Ann Richards, Bella Abzug, and Shirley Chisholm. Each of these women made political firsts. Hello, and welcome to the third episode of the RaceAware podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Willis Richey, along with my co-host, Tony Szynski.
Hello.
And Dan Sauber.
Hi.
We're aiming to reveal little-known histories, historical whitewashing, resulting governmental and corporate policies, and ongoing impact of unchecked misinformation. Hey guys, we're on our third podcast talking about women for the March 2021 Women's Month. How are you feeling about today's show?
I'm feeling good about it. I'm stoked.
Yeah, I can't wait to go over these ladies. They're definitely part of all of our histories.
And one is my personal hero anyway, so.
All right, so great. So let's just go ahead and start. What we'll do is we'll talk about the ladies, their stories, and then do a little discussion about each one. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right, let's just start with Barbara Jordan.
Barbara Shirley Jordan was born in Houston, Texas on February 21st, 1936. She was a graduate of Tuskegee Institute and worked in a local warehouse before becoming a pastor of Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church. Barbara Jordan's political turning point occurred when she worked on the John F. Kennedy presidential campaign in 1960. She eventually helped manage a highly organized Get Out the Vote program that served Houston's 40 African American precincts. Sounds a lot like today, doesn't it?
40. Wow, that's a lot for back then, right?
Yeah. In 1971, Jordan entered the race for Texas congressional seat encompassing downtown Houston. Jordan became the first African American in the 20th century to be elected to Congress from the Deep South. In the next two campaign cycles, Jordan overwhelmed her opposition, capturing 85% of the total vote in both general elections.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Representative Jordan's political philosophy from her days in the state legislature led her to focus on local issues. Civil rights and women's rights activists sometimes criticized her when she chose to favor her community interests rather than theirs. Jordan was reluctant to commit herself fully to any one interest group or caucus, such as the Congressional Black Caucus, of which she was a member. Her views on that were stemmed from the fact that she wanted to be known as a politician. She was quoted as saying, "I am neither a black politician nor a woman politician, just a politician, a professional politician." I think that's very admirable. The Congressional Black Caucus members traditionally sat, and this is interesting because she was so calculating. They traditionally sat to the far left of the chamber, but Jordan chose to sit near the center aisle because she could hear better and be seen by the presiding officer, and to save an open seat for colleagues who wanted to stop by and chat. Her seating preference, as well as her loyalty to the Texas delegation, agitated fellow CBC members, but both were consistent with Jordan's model of seeking congressional influence. It was a freshman member of the Judiciary Committee, however, that Jordan earned national recognition. In the summer of 1974, and a lot of us can remember this, as the committee considered articles of impeachment against President Richard Nixon for crimes associated with the Watergate scandal, Jordan delivered opening remarks that shook the committee. Her statement was, "My faith in the Constitution is whole, it is complete, it is total. I am not going to sit here and be an idle spectator to the demonization and subversion of the destruction of the Constitution." That brings it home today a little bit, I think.
Oh my God. I can't believe we're reliving this again and again. That's what they say, that history just repeats itself, and it's just the stage has just a bunch of new actors in it, but the play is always the same.
Right. Jordan's talent as a speaker continued on to contribute to her national profile. In 1976, she became the first woman and first African American keynote speaker at a Democratic National Convention.
Yay.
In 1978, downplaying reports at her poor health, Jordan declined to run for what would have been certain re-election to a fourth term, citing her internal compass. She continued to lecture widely on national affairs, and in 1988 and 1992, she delivered speeches at the Democratic National Convention. Her 1992 keynote address was delivered from a wheelchair while she was in the midst of a lengthy battle with multiple sclerosis. And in 1990, National Women's Hall of Fame in Seneca, New York. She never married and carefully guarded her private life. Jordan died in Austin, Texas on January 17, 1996 from pneumonia, a complication of leukemia. An incredible lady.
Sure was.
Wow, that's a big story. It's short because we do have to mind the time.
Right.
Some of these women, I think, they literally deserve their own show. But let's do the best that we can. She was amazing, amazing.
It's interesting that speech that she gave before Congress on the impeachment of Richard Nixon. At the time, I was in high school, and we were in class, so we did not get to see that. They didn't bring television TVs in and let us watch proceedings, so we'd have to catch bits and pieces on the news. But I did see her give that opening speech at the Democratic National Convention, and it was that speech that got me interested in politics. She was so commanding. Her presence, I was just captivated. I was like, oh my God, who is this woman? And she just took me by storm, and I'm like, oh, I want to know more about what's going on. That was the first convention I ever watched in totality.
Really?
So, Barbara, I got interested in politics.
Yeah, she was one of the women that I saw when I marched on Washington with Barbara Jordan and Bella Abzug. And to listen to them in person, it just blew me away. It was incredible.
I mean, I feel the hair on my arm just standing up thinking about you actually seeing her live. The chance of had that happen. She was truly an amazing woman. And as we've talked offline, you mentioned she guarded her private life. Many people don't realize that she was involved in a relationship with a woman for many, many years and kept that totally private, totally secret. I'm sure the press probably was aware of it, but back then they weren't quite as nasty as they are today.
And I think keeping it, there's a difference between keeping something like that guarded because you're ashamed of it and keeping it guarded simply because it's private. Also knowing what your goals are.
I don't think she was ashamed of it. I think she knew that came out, she would not be able to accomplish her agenda.
Right, and that's exactly where I was leading, because then people would then be distracted or use it as a distraction to throw her off of her agenda, like you said.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, you said she won by 85%?
Right.
Imagine that. In that time frame, a woman won by 85%, let alone an African American woman by 85%.
Yeah, in that time, that's just unheard of. Well, it's unheard of for them to be there to begin with, and then to win by those margins. That's just that's just incredible.
Yeah, they had to fight to get their seat there.
I have news for you. Black people have to fight for everything.
Yeah. Well, and then she was a woman and then a gay woman. So she had to make sure that her job was as a politician, not a black politician, not a woman politician, not as a gay politician.
When you really think about it, it's like within the way America has structured things. She had everything against her, right? She's a woman.
Right.
She's black and secretly gay.
Right. That's incredible.
It's unbelievable. So what else do we have to say about Barbara? I didn't remember. I shouldn't say I didn't know. I didn't quite remember that she had MS. But now you reminded me.
She was nominated by Bill Clinton to become an ambassador to, I think it was one of the Caribbean island nation, and because of her health, they turned it down. But they still want her involved on the federal level. I mean, she was that much admired and loved.
So was she still in office when she passed, or she was retired?
She retired because of physical problems. She was guaranteed re-election, and she just didn't think she could do it anymore. But she stayed on the agenda and fought for women's rights, and she was on committees and up until the day she died.
Wow.
I liked her stand on. She was a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, and they assumed that she would fall in line and agree with everything they wanted to do, and that's not the way she looked at politics.
Well, that's not the way politics should be viewed. It's not
Exactly.
It's not a members only club, which is what we're experiencing right now. You're supposed to represent, to the best of your ability, your constituency.
Right.
But the caveat that people are missing today is, yes, you must represent your constituency, but that must also make some sense nationally. So not only are you representing the constituency, if your constituency wants to nuke the United States, you can't just go along with that, because that's going to impact the whole United States.
Right.
So you have to be sophisticated if you're a politician, not a one-dimensional buffoon.
Well, we have a few Congress people today and senators that don't quite get that as it is anyway.
They'll never get it.
Well, and plus, she wanted to make sure that she had control over the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
That's why she was very choosy about what agendas she chose, because she liked that control over that agenda.
So did you guys know that she also worked, she was actually the chair of the Commission on Immigration Reform?
Mm.
No, I did not know that.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah, she was in that from 1994 until she died. And you already said that she died in 1996.
Wow.
You know, the commission recommended the total immigration to be cut by 1/3 to approximately 550,000 per year. The commission supported increasing enforcement against undocumented migrants and their employers, eliminating visa preferences for siblings and adult children of U.S. citizens, and ending unskilled immigration except for refugees and nuclear families. And there's a lot more, but you know, we can't talk about everything in one episode, right?
Right.
Yeah, but nonetheless, she was definitely a trailblazer, and what I admire the most is the fact that she can be true to her word. She took an oath to do something in a particular position, and it didn't matter who came to partner with her, to derail her, she stood firm.
And she was loyal. She was very loyal to her Texas voters. In
Yes.
fact, one voter even made a message and put it on a billboard in Houston,
Mm-hmm.
thanking Barbara Jordan. That's pretty incredible for back then.
They were thanking her for
her service, for everything that she did, and also the way she handled the Watergate impeachment hearings.
Wow.
It just boosted her reputation exponentially.
Well, we got some billboards going up these days. All right, let's take a look at Ann Richards. What did Ann Richards do for us? I love all four of these women.
So Ann Richards, ironically enough, also another Texan, was born in 1933 and lived the 2006. She came to politics kind of in a roundabout way. Graduated from Baylor University in 1954.
Mm-hmm.
She married. She earned, her husband earned her law degree and taught junior high school.
Mm-hmm.
While raising 4 kids. They moved to Dallas, and that's where Ann was raising her children. Her husband was involved in politics. In 1969, they came back to Austin, Texas, and that's where she became involved in politics. She became a legislative aide for 2 women, Sarah Weddington and Wilhelmina Delco, in the early 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah Weddington got elected to the State House, and Ann Richards became her assistant.
Okay.
So then in 1975, her husband, a lawyer, was asked by the Democratic Party to run for office. He turned him down and decided, hell with that, I'm going to run. She ran and became the woman in that position, which was the Travis County commissioner.
Mhm.
So this goes back, this is a personal thing with me too. I think we lose sight that everything is local, and you start local and you build up. And that's exactly what Ann did. She saw that position as an important starting place for her, took it around with it. So then that was in 75, 76. In 82, she was elected the state treasurer,
Mhm.
first woman in Texas to have that position in over 50 years.
Right.
And then, just like Barbara Jordan, she delivered the keynote address for the Democratic National Convention in 88. And her famous quote of the time was, 2 women in 160 years is about par for the course. But if you give us a chance, we can perform. After all, Ginger Rogers did everything Fred Astaire did. She just did it backwards, in heels.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
So,
Wow. Well, there's another quote that I remember her saying. She said, "When we pay billions for planes that won't fly, billions for tanks that won't fire, and billions for systems that don't work, that old dog won't hunt."
well, if we're going to do that, I have to say probably my favorite one is where she talked about you can put lipstick and earrings on a hog and call it Monique. It's still a pig.
I used to love. I mean, I have to confess, every time Ann Richards would come on, I had to listen to her because she really did bring a smile on my face before she even started talking. I knew that she was going to say something, not just about being witty. It was something that was witty and sharp-edged blade of the truth.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I think that probably the closest we've got today might be Anna Navarro.
Anna Navarro?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anna Navarro cracks me up. I just love her.
But anyway,
I love her passion. She's like, I just love when she is just setting the record straight.
Very straight.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't mince words.
So now things get a little bit ugly. So we're now in 1990, and Ann decides to run the race for governor.
Mm-hmm.
There's a heated primary between Attorney General Jim Maddox, the former Governor Mark White. She won the Democratic nomination and then narrowly beat her Republican opponent, Clayton Williams, becoming the second woman governor of Texas and the first elected in her own right. Turns out that the first woman, Miriam Ma Ferguson,
Mm-hmm.
her husband was the governor of Texas. He got impeached for, let's just say, some shady underdealings.
Mm-hmm.
Fine. They just appointed his wife to fill out the role of his remaining term.
Of course, because we're in a kingdom. We're in a kingdom, not a democracy.
Yeah. But no, Ann was technically the first fully elected woman on her own in the state of Texas.
Right.
Now, what I did not know, and I give her props for this, she led reform on the state prison system. She signed the Texas Financial Responsibility Law.
Mm-hmm.
She opened public financing. She vetoed a concealed weapons bill. This is the 90s in Texas.
Wow.
And she did that. Unfortunately, she lost re-election to George Bush in 94. She went on to work as a political consultant, got about every award you get, including the Texas NAACP Presidential Award for Outstanding Contributions to Civil Rights and the Mexican government's Order of the Aztec Eagle.
Yes. And of course, yeah, that's called, what was that called? That's called like the National Wildlife Federation.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Wildlife Federation Achievement Award. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a really big deal. And so you have her becoming a beloved American icon. You have another country recognizing her for all the things that she did. You have the NAACP saying, yay for you for helping us out. Just amazing. Now, we talk about women in politics. So during that first run for governor, the gentleman on the other side, I use that word loosely, had people go out and basically terrorize her. They would put death wreaths on the campaign doors of her campaign offices, shady, leaked memos that were totally made up and false. It was a real smear campaign. They did not want a woman in that office. And yet she got elected. Where she kind of found her downfall in 93, when she signed the new recodified Texas Penal Code, it included anti-homosexual language, and it still kept gay sex as a felony. And
that was a felony in Texas?
Actually, I'm sorry, it was a Class C misdemeanor, but it was still engaging in deviant sexual intercourse. So
I
when
think
she
that's the
ran
kind of intercourse people usually like, though.
That's a whole new show.
I'm a choir boy. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
Quickly.
I couldn't help it. I had to throw that one in.
That was used against her because her name was on that bill. And while the bill did a lot of good things for penal reform,
Mm-hmm.
it kept the homosexual conduct. It actually strengthened it. And that was one of the big issues that helped her get defeated. Again, we're talking George Bush, but that's neither here nor there. But she also had her own feminine leadership style and her oratory style. She blended traditional feminine traits such as nurturing, relationship building, with masculine traits such as being assertive,
Mm-hmm.
being direct. She walked a fine line and did it very, very, very well. She was definitely cutting edge. She was sometimes being called too masculine, but not being feminine enough. I mean, no matter what you do, you couldn't win.
Well, let me tell you something. Those things that are said about strong women, I have always found them to be a compliment. And every time I would get those kind of comments and disparaging, what they think is a disparaging remark, that would always spur me on, because you know what? That made me realize, hey, I'm doing it right. I'm going to keep on going.
Right. I totally agree.
Mm-hmm. Well, on the other side of the break, we'll take a look at some possible reasons why the general population was not fully on board with the women in politics. Stay with us. Welcome back. Let's continue talking about our next two ladies, Bella Abzug and then Shirley Chisholm. So, Dan, what do you got for us on Bella?
Well, Bella was quite a character. And again, I had the privilege of listening to her speak when I was only 20 years old in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
She was the daughter of a Russian Jewish immigrant. Her original name, her birth name, was Bella Savitsky, and she was born in Bronx, New York on July 24th, 1920.
Bronx.
Yeah. She received an AB from Hunter College in Manhattan in 1942 and immediately entered Columbia University Law School. And in 1944, Bella Savitsky married Martin Abzug. Now, that's her early bio, but to give you an idea of who Bella was really, what she was really like, if you remember Theodore Roosevelt's famous declaration that on foreign policy that America should speak softly and carry a big stick. Well, Bella added her own little twist to that and said women have been trained to talk softly and carry a lipstick. So, you know where this lady was going. And
is that why they called her Battling Bella?
Yes, Battling Bella was one of the few nicknames and a few that I can't mention on air.
Oh, Lord.
She had quite a reputation. In 1970, at the age of 50, Abzug made her first attempt at elected office when she decided to enter the race for U.S. House of Representatives seat in Manhattan's wealthy, liberal Upper West Side. After taking the official oath of office, 92nd Congress on January 3rd, 1971, Abzug took a people's oath on the House, which I've never heard of, but a people's oath on the House steps administered by her New York colleague, Shirley Chisholm. Despite her freshman status, Abzug made waves in Congress by supporting a variety of controversial causes. This seemed to be her claim to fame. Anything controversial was right in there for Bella. On the first day of the session, she introduced legislation demanding the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Vietnam. She authored a bill to end the draft, which she compared to slavery. She said it was motivated by insane priorities. And she asked for an investigation into the incompetence of the widely feared Federal Bureau of Investigation Director, J. Edgar Hoover. So she wasn't out to make friends. She was really rattling some cages back then.
You talk about taking on an enemy their first day like that.
Right.
Well, there's one of our representatives today that jumped in the pool just like that.
Yes.
And I think we'll be talking about her in part 3, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So tell us a little more about the People's Oath.
The People's Oath. It was more of her commitment to the people, not just to the position or to the government. It was as if she was doing a separate oath just for the people of the United States.
Right.
I've never heard of that. I thought it was incredible. And then to have Shirley Chisholm involved in that, I thought it was incredible.
Well, the reason I asked that is because it sounds exactly what it is. They named it exactly what it is.
Right.
But I think that's really important and significant because up until that time, think about it. The Constitution and the way that our government works, it works on the predicate of self-governance and honor.
Right.
And once you lose that, it takes a while for us, the people, to realize that things are not really running the way they should in the back room.
Right.
Okay? But even back then, I mean, we're talking about what 20, 30 years ago, that they felt like they had to do something to beyond just the regular inauguration oath. Something that said that, yes, I am here for you. That shouldn't even be necessary.
Right. It really shouldn't be.
And I'm impressed with the fact that it was done by Shirley Chisholm.
Yeah. You just love Shirley Chisholm to death. If she could do anything, you just love her.
I have a reason why. I'll share that.
I mean, I love all of them. I love their energy. I love their chutzpah. I just love everything about them, good, bad, and indifferent. That's what it's about. That's what makes them who they are and who we know.
Well, and Bella wasn't afraid to talk about herself in that way. Norman Mailer wrote about her once that her voice was an instrument that could boil the fat off a taxi cab driver's neck. I mean, come on.
Who's this guy, Norman? Wow.
Great quote.
He's not even poetic.
Yeah, but she didn't mind talking about herself in that way. She said, there are those who say I'm impatient, impetuous, uppity. There you go, Tony. Uppity.
Uppity.
Rude, profane, brash, and overbearing. Whether I'm any of these things or all of them, you can decide for yourself. But whatever I am, and this ought to be made clear from the outset, I am a very serious woman. And,
Amen.
I know Tony had said something when we talked earlier about her hat. And she was easy to spot in that wide brim hat. She began wearing it as a young female professional because she believed it was the only way men would take her seriously.
Yeah.
So she continued wearing that hat all throughout her entire career.
And it was so noticeable. You could see it a block away.
Yes.
There were times when she'd be in the city in New York, and literally she'd just get up on the third step of a stoop, and people would gather, and she'd just do an impromptu speech.
Right.
So tell us, what would you say would be the main, whether it was legislation or stance, what was Bella best known for besides the hat?
Well, her most noteworthy contribution, one being particularly the Sunshine Laws under the Freedom of Information Act. The Sunshine Law, which required the government hearings to be held in public, came out of the Subcommittee on Government Information and Individual Rights. She also introduced, and I had no idea about this, she introduced groundbreaking legislation aimed at increasing the rights of gay Americans. The bill called for amending the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to prohibit discrimination on the basis of sexual or affectional preference.
And she had the depth of love of the New York gay community.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I have to say it. It's really a shame. I mean, this didn't happen a year ago or 2 years ago, and we are still discussing this.
Yeah.
I thought America was supposed to be a forward country.
No. Not from what we're seeing today. I know Tony and I've had this discussion a lot of times. It's like I can't believe after marching on Washington back in 1974, I'm marching in the streets again at this age. I mean, what's up with that?
You're talking about marching in the streets. What about the civil rights movement? We're still doing that. If it wasn't on everything that you see that there's a expansion of rights rests on the shoulders of the civil rights movement. If it wasn't for that, other people would not have that leapfrog ability. Okay?
Right.
There's a leapfrog ability because of that. And I'm not going to just go on a tangent right now because we do need to still talk about Shirley.
Right.
So let's do that, and then we'll talk about this leapfrog ability and the current things that are happening right now with the Asian people being targeted.
Oh, okay, great.
Let's talk about Shirley, Tony. What do you got for us on Shirley? Your favorite?
Okay, so it is my pleasure to talk about a fellow New Yorker, Shirley Chisholm. I may have been living in Florida for 32 years, but New York will always be my home.
That's right.
I'm a Bronx boy, and I'm very proud to be a Bronx boy. So,
and I'm a Queens girl. Queens.
Yes, and you are my queen. So there we go.
Aw, thanks, Tony.
Anyway, Shirley Anita St. Hill Chisholm was the first African American woman in Congress in 1968.
Mm-hmm.
And first woman, and also became the first African American to seek the nomination for president of the United States in 1972. Now, Shirley was born in 1924. She was the oldest of four daughters of two immigrant parents.
Mm-hmm.
Her dad, Earl St. Hill, was a factory worker from Guyana.
Mm-hmm. And
her mother, Ruby Seal St. Hill, was a seamstress from Barbados. She graduated girls' high school in Brooklyn in 1942, Brooklyn College cum laude in 1946, which won prizes on the debate team. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting. In 1946, her professors were already saying to her, go into politics. And she replied, I can't do that. I've got a double handicap. I'm black and I'm a woman.
Her professors were pushing her?
Yes. In 1946, she was that much of a firebrand in college. She graduated cum laude in 46 and was like a master speaking, political speaker, debater. I mean, she just had it all. She really had it going for her. She then went on to Columbia University, earned her master's degree in childhood education in 1951. And you think about that. How many women were getting secondary degrees, let alone primary degrees?
Back in those days.
Right. By 1960, she became a consultant to the New York City Division of Daycare. Ever aware of racial and gender inequality, she joined local chapter League of Women Voters, the NAACP, the Urban League, as well as the Democratic Party in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. In 1964, she ran and became the second African American in the New York State Legislature. After court-ordered redistricting created a new heavily Democratic district in her neighborhood, Chisholm sought and won a seat in Congress. So, present day, there's lots of gerrymandering, and if we actually had districts that were drawn the way they should be, it might be a more even playing field. She became known as Fighting Shirley. Her motto and the title of her autobiography was Unbossed and Unbought.
I like that a lot.
So, but Fighting Shirley was her nickname. She introduced more than 50 pieces of legislation championing racial and gender equality, applied the poor, and also ending the Vietnam War. She was the co-founder of the National Women's Political Caucus in 1971, and in 1977 became the first black woman and second woman to ever serve on the powerful House Rules Committee. That year, she married her husband, Arthur Hardwick Jr., of the New York State Legislature. In 1972, she became presidential nominee. She ran for president of the Democratic Party. She was blocked from participating in televised debates. After taking legal action, she was allowed to make just one speech. Still, students, women, and minorities followed the Chisholm Trail. She entered 12 primaries, won 152 delegates, which is only 10% of the vote. And despite an underfinanced campaign, contentions from the predominantly male Congressional Black Caucus, her bid for president was over. On a personal note, being raised in New York City, in the Bronx, and then moving out to New Jersey in the suburbs, in my family, I never really heard much racial talk. I'm sure it was there, I just never heard it. The first time I ever heard the word uppity was when Shirley Chisholm ran for president. That's when I started hearing lots of negativity from people around me that I'd never heard these things before. They felt so threatened by this. It wasn't the fact she was a woman. That was bad enough. How dare that black woman think she can do this?
Right.
And that was a really rude awakening for me.
They always had nicknames for him, like Battling Bella and Fighting Shirley.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The other thing is that even when she earned her seat, they even had a problem with how she ran her office. Did you
Right.
know? Did you know that she hired only women in her office? 50% were black.
Their cause.
Right, 50% of the women were black, and they had a problem with that. And a lot of times they were even trying to bring her up on discrimination charges, not the people on the inside, but the men on the outside. And I find that very funny because when you even look at the Black Congressional Congress, the caucus back then in 1971, she's the only woman, and then there's one white guy, and all the rest are black men. Now, obviously, the black men don't have a choice because they made it there, but it was hard for women to make it in general into a government. But if they're doing it, men have been doing it forever. And if women start to do something like that, it's really catch up time. We need to catch up.
Right.
Now, piggybacking on what Dan was talking about when he was talking about Bella Abzug, Shirley Chisholm was also supported both financially and with power of the voice by the National Organization of Women, Betty Friedan, Gloria Steinem, obviously Bella Abzug, and she was the first woman to appear in a presidential debate.
Yes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. The first black female to run for president, right?
And actually first female to run for president.
Mm-hmm.
She broke a lot of barriers, and unfortunately, that glass ceiling was very strong in place. Anyway, she retired from Congress in 1983. She then went on to teach at Mount Holyoke College. She co-founded the National Political Congress of Black Women. She moved to Florida in 91, and then as her health declined, she was offered to be the U.S. ambassador to Jamaica, but due to ill health, she turned it down.
Yeah.
On her legacy, Chisholm was famous to say, "I want to be remembered as a woman who dared to be a catalyst of change."
Well, I like the fact that you mentioned that glass ceiling again, because we talk about that a lot today in politics. But these women were busting ceilings left and right back in the 60s and 70s. And I don't think a lot of times they got the credit they should have gotten. I mean, just like political financial support for a woman back in the 60s and 70s, it was next to impossible.
Think about it. Even in the 60s, a woman could not open a checking account on her own.
Exactly.
You needed a permission.
Yep.
These kick-ass women were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
They were some incredible women.
Now, to kind of close out on Shirley, just because I think she deserved the props that she got.
Mm-hmm.
She won the Presidential Medal of Freedom posthumously by Barack Obama in 2015. And Kamala Harris, our vice president, wore a purple dress in honor of Shirley Chisholm's honor during her inauguration. So, even Kamala recognized she was where she was at
because of her foremothers.
In 2015, Barack Obama gave Shirley Chisholm the Presidential Medal of Freedom, posthumously, obviously, honoring her. But more importantly, Kamala Harris, on January 20th, 2021, became the first black woman to become vice president, wore a purple dress in Shirley Chisholm's honor during the inauguration.
Right.
So even Kamala was aware of, she got where she is today because what Shirley and Ann and Barbara and Bella had done prior.
That's right.
That's very cool.
Really, all of us are sitting here because of someone that did something that inconvenienced their lives for the greater good.
Right. We're always we're always standing on the shoulders of somebody else, whether you realize it or not.
Exactly. Always.
And it's for me, and I mean for all of us actually. All of this is in my lifetime.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, we've gone through a lot in our lifetime. I remember when I was a little girl, I still admire seniors, But as a little girl, like my best friends were like senior people. I loved sitting with them, listening to the stories, asking questions. I just thought that they were amazing. And just, I remember thinking, wow, can you imagine living through all of that? And now
Right.
I'm saying that I've lived through all of that.
Right. Right.
Oh,
You know, and we talk about what these women did. So we, put in context of the civil rights movement. You know, people lost their lives. People were beaten, had dogs sick on them, water cannons. I mean, just horrific, horrible things whatsoever.
right. And I just don't understand how other people can't look at that and empathize and say, wow. I mean, this is not an action movie that you're watching that you know everybody's going to dust themselves off and go home. These people were bloodied, beaten, jailed, lives ruined, died
Right.
in order not for them to enjoy the fruits of the difficulties, the hardships, and the horror that they are going through, but for somebody else. How selfless can people be, and then the recipients not have the level of gratitude that should be given?
Right.
You know, interesting enough, the three of us living in Florida right now. So when Black Lives Matter,
Don't tell them that we live in Florida, okay? Because we need to get out of Florida.
Oh, okay. Oh, then I won't.
Got here.
Then I'm not going to say what I'm going to say then.
Oh, okay, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, when the Black Lives Matter movement started, one of the things that Ron DeSantis did, the governor of Florida, was to create this bill that is working its way through the legislature to criminalize disobedience and protesting.
Yes.
And I wonder who that's going to affect the most.
Right. Well, it's just in time for the white terrorists. What are they calling them? White terrorists? What are they calling them?
Oh no, they're just having a bad day, or they're good guys.
Right. I mean, that's actually worse than when they used to say that a woman is on her period and she's having a bad day. I never heard of a woman kill anybody because she had her period.
Right.
That's a bad day.
No.
Okay, you're having a migraine. You're having you woke up, you just disgusted about something. You're having a bad day, but you just go about your day.
That sheriff came out and said, "Oh, he was just having a bad day. Killed 8 people. Had a bad day." Whoa.
Right.
Or then again, my other pet peeve is we'll give all the white guys a pass by saying, "Oh, it's mental health issues." And trust me, I suffered depression for years. I have no problem with mental health. But to give every white guy a pass with mental health?
Every single one.
No.
Well,
every single one. No.
Well, let's get on our break right now. We'll take a look at some of the possible reasons that the general population was not fully on board with women in politics. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
RaceAware.
Welcome back, everybody. All right, so guys, hello. So guys, let's frame this, everything we were talking about in the previous segment, let's frame this against the women's movement. Tony?
I think it's a natural fit.
It's a national what?
So it's a natural fit.
Okay, a natural fit.
World War II, all the men went overseas. Women were working in the factories. They basically ran the country, except for the political level, right?
Right.
War's over. Men come back. Women expect to go back to being a housewife, the mother, not work, stay at home, whatever. Then the 60s hit, and as you said earlier, you couldn't open a checking account. We had women starting to rise up and saying, "Hey, wait a minute. I want to get an education. I want equal pay in the workplace. I want a chance to succeed." So now we've got women rising up. Gloria Steinem, Betty Friedan, National Organization of Women, the 4 women we just talked about, all coming together. The synergy really created this tornado. And I think it just lit a fire in everybody. And so now you've got women rising and saying, "Yes, I deserve this. and the men being threatened, saying, no, go back in the kitchen.
Go back in the kitchen
Right.
and make sure you're barefoot.
Well, that too.
Well, for myself, I worked with those women. The Ford plant that I was hired into in Northwest Ohio shut down during World War II, and it was turned into a parts plant for the war effort. And a lot of those women that were in there when I first hired in the 70s were still working there.
Wow.
They remember what it was like, but they didn't see it as we were doing this wonderful thing for our country.
Right.
Because I was born and raised in the Midwest. They were simply grateful to have a job where they could feed their kids while their husbands were at war.
Right.
I think coming from where I come from, in a small town in Northwest Ohio, we were just trying to make ends meet like everyone else. I don't think that they really thought about it. They just did it. And those were some of the strongest women that I ever met in my life were the women I worked with in that plant. I admired them so much.
Women have to be strong. Women have always had to be strong.
I can remember my cousin Carolyn. She decided not to marry and wanted to put her time and effort into her career. And my family was just totally opposed to that. No, you need a husband. She's like, no, I want my career.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right,
It's like dangling bait in front of somebody and saying, here, if you do a good job, we'll pat you on the head and you'll have a job for life. But unfortunately, the minute the guys came home from war, they were out.
just like that. Not even a thought.
No, yeah.
And here it is, how many years later, we're still paying women 80 cents on the dollar.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see it went up. I thought it was 70 cents on the dollar.
Oh, I think, well, maybe it's 75 now, I don't know, but it's definitely less what it should be.
Yeah. Well, it's not one to one.
No.
All right, so how did these women create the groundwork for the women that we see today in politics?
Oh, I think two ways. One was having a discussion and getting them to talk about it, and two, organizationally, the National Organization of Women, for example, Planned Parenthood. Which, by the way, one of the past presidents of Planned Parenthood, Cecilia Richards, was Ann Richards' daughter.
Right. So basically, you're saying that they laid the groundwork in order to make it easier for women to have careers. Is that what you're saying?
Well, actually, it wasn't at the time. They were just breaking the doors down.
Right.
They had a fight to break that door down. And once the door was broken down, then it's like, what can we do to even playing field?
Okay, so
Yeah, they had to keep it open.
yeah, right. So how did these empowered women of the past light the fires for the women that we see today? So we have, like you said, all of the things with the birth control and just things that were never really addressed because women were just supposed to be at home. So you wouldn't need daycare, you wouldn't need reproductive care or issues to be addressed. So, aside from being out there in the forefront showing that women can do it, what I'm getting from you, Tony, is you're saying that they also are building the infrastructure for women to be able to have choices.
Yes, I do think that is real. So we have the conversation started. Women are talking. Women are starting to say, yes, we can do this. They're laying the groundwork for city councils, state house representatives, working their way up to congressional seats. And it's basically a building block process. They laid the foundation, and then the next layer came on top, the next layer came on top. I don't think we would see a Kamala Harris, an AOC, a Katie Porter today had it not been for the four women we talked about. And then we wouldn't have seen them if it hadn't been for the suffragette movement at the turn of the century.
Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree.
That's absolutely true.
One thing I noticed was when I look at on TV and I see the stage for President of the United States and I see women up there, the women in the 60s and 70s couldn't even get on that stage.
No.
They were still in the audience, not even in the front row. They had to fight to get on that stage. And once they got that notoriety, they had to find a way of staying there because at every turn, there was somebody that was trying to knock them off.
Oh, of course, because no matter whatever is not the typical white male is not going to be accepted as to moving forward or to get up to that level.
Right.
Whether it's a woman, whether it's a marginalized person and a woman, or just a marginalized other person, if you get there, I often imagine, I remember, I'm going to say it, when Obama made it and became president, one of the things I said to my family, well, I know that those guys are saying, who the hell left the crack in the system? How did that guy get through?
Right.
And it just feels like instead of embracing it and taking it as an advancement and something that is an achievement for all of us, usually the white male politicians go into preservation mode.
Oh, it's definitely preservation mode. It's right. They're saving their skins right now.
Right.
I'm and this is the last push, but it's just I'm over it.
And we're having to deal with it again right now, because even though there's and there's another thing that I wasn't too happy with it, but you know the system that you have to work with. And I always felt that Joe Biden had to be the top of the ticket. And then we'll worry about the vice president, because he's the one that could make the dent that we needed. Okay, as long as the black population, women, all marginalized people would rally around him. But we also need the white vote. So to me, he was the only one that could have been where we needed him to be, because we could not afford not one era with that idiot that was trying to get a second term.
You also have to remember that back in the 60s and early 70s, although it was the majority of the men that tried to stop the women's movement, there were a lot of women that were against the women's movement.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And not to mention the fact that the African American woman was not being represented right away in the women's movement.
Well,
so it just seemed like at every turn they had something they had to knock over or break to get ahead.
Well, those women, I'm sure that those women are probably the ancestors of the same women that voted in 2016 for Trump.
No doubt. No doubt.
And they're also widely aligned with a fundamental form of Christianity as well, too.
Yeah.
Yes. Usually it was the case.
You know, the man runs the household. You submit to the man. That's what the Bible says.
You can't coerce somebody to vote a certain way. If these husbands are forcing their wives to vote a certain way, because some days I don't want to believe that these women actually really wanted to vote that way against their best interest.
Oh, I do think they want to keep things the status quo for themselves.
Yeah, I can see that too. I can see that too. That's why I say some days I don't want to believe it. But you're right. The days that I believe it is exactly the reason that you said, because they're living where they feel comfortable, they feel secure, and they want to keep that. Yep. They don't care if other people are living insecure. Some people can't feed their kid. Some people can't go and get checked out to make sure that there's nothing wrong with their health. They just keep pressing along and hope for the best.
Right, especially in middle America.
Yes.
You know, many of the women, they had no desire to march in the streets and burn their bras. All they ever knew was being a wife and a mother. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want, but that's all they knew. So it was uncomfortable for them when they saw all this going on. I remember listening to a lot of the women when I was a kid.
Yeah, but the movement,
women burning bras.
The movement isn't saying that they're going to force you to burn your bra. You keep your bra. Right, you keep your bra, and then the other women will just do whatever they want. Whether they want to wear it, want to wear it for special occasions, don't want to wear it ever. That's the whole point. You can still do.
That's not the message they were getting. You know,
oh yeah, okay. Then here we're gonna go with the whitewashing right now, because that was the next thing that we're gonna. I was gonna bring in is, where's the whitewashing in these stories? Because I'm sure that a lot of the pushback that these women got and some of the horrific little stories that you were telling us about, Dan and Tony, where people were literally bashing them and hanging funeral wreaths at their campaign headquarters. Those things will probably result of whitewashing news and propaganda that went around to demonize these women.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the message we got.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that we're looking at two different situations here. We've got highlighted two white women and two black women,
Mm-hmm.
and the whitewashing is basically, when we say whitewashing, all we're really saying is we're not telling the truth.
Right. Exactly.
So I mean, when I talk to people and I say whitewashing, they go, "Oh, you're the racial stuff again." No, whitewashing is not racial per se. It can be, but it's not. It's just not telling the truth, a cover up, making something
Right.
look pretty. Something dark look pretty.
It's making something look pretty so that but you're still lying, or making something look worse than it is because it serves your purpose.
Right.
Pretty because it serves your purpose, ugly because it serves your purpose.
Right. So I think when you look at the two white women, Bella and Anne, they were basically attacked against the traditional role of the woman.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at Barbara and Shirley,
mm-hmm.
They had so much more on top of that. Like I said, the first ever was that uppity black woman. Who does she think she is? And it just went downhill very quickly from there. And yet, the level of sophistication, the level of awareness, it just blows me away. These are highly educated people. At times when women are not getting education, they're getting double degrees, they're getting masters, they're getting doctorates.
Right.
In the 40s and 50s. Who did that? I mean, and you're going to marginalize these women because they're so smart? Whoa.
No, because that's going to be like throwing a stone into the cog.
Right.
You're throwing a stone in the system. You don't want that. When there's a small group of people that control everything, the last thing that they would want is anyone who's enlightened, and especially anyone who's enlightened and has a following. Like when you've got somebody like Jordan that has 85% of the vote, that's a lot of people listening to her.
Yeah, that is a lot.
And that sounds very threatening to a lot of people.
Well, it would only sound threatening to somebody who's
down.
Yeah, it will only sound threatening to someone who has an agenda other than the agenda that they should have. We don't vote people into office so that they can have their own agenda. When you're voted into office, you're voted to do and advance the interests of the United States and its people. The reason that these politicians get so comfortable is because they've created a world where politics is a career. Well, I have news for you. Politics is not a career. Politics was meant for individual citizens to have a chance, like the men and women in the military that serve. Politics is a way for civilians to serve their country and their constitution. It's time to get these people out and start running this country the way that they like to say the forefathers imagined.
Well, we got to keep the caveat, though, that the forefathers were the 1%.
I understand, but they keep using that. They use it as we were respecting the forefathers. Well, you know what? You cherry pick what you want to respect, that the forefathers. Well, now, you know what? We are going to start changing things. We can't wait for these politicians to decide that they've pilferaged enough. It's time for us to step up and say you're fired because we sent you there. We sent you there. And you're not doing what you need to do. You're doing a horrible job when the majority of this country, who was saying, Tony, was it you that was saying the other day that something like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and a couple of other people, you throw another, 2 or 3 of those billionaires, make as much, I think Bernie was saying that, make as much as 40% of the U.S. population. That's atrocious.
And it was just the 2 men. It was just Jeff and Elon.
Right, just 2. And here's the thing too. when you look at a country like Japan, Japan works to normalize living, and people live very well there. They normalize the income. They normalize. There's rich people. There's people who are better off. There are people who are rich. There are people who are very comfortable. And I'm sure their level of poverty is very small.
I do think their level of poverty is much smaller because they also have that tradition of the family takes care of family.
That's right.
But they also push themselves to some extreme limits.
Like what?
Yeah, they work 16-hour days.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we work 16-hour days and we're not compensated.
No, but they are.
They are what? They're compensated?
They're compensated.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You're saying they push them to the limit, but Americans are working more than one job, 2, 3 jobs. If it's a salaried position, they're expecting you to put in 80 hours a week rather than 80 hours every 2 weeks, and you're not getting compensated correctly because you shouldn't be putting that many hours in to work, and then you're still counting pennies. You still don't have health care.
Right.
You still don't know how you're going to send your kids to school. Why are you working so hard and you don't even have what they call the American dream? Back in the day,
Right.
people worked one job. One job took care of buying a house, a car, savings, retirement, vacation, sending kids to school, everything. How is it that 2 jobs can't do it now? How is it?
No.
Great point. Great point.
Well, we went off on a tangent, but I want to thank these ladies because they are so important to the women today.
Actually, well, I'm going to correct you on that one. It's not just the women's day; it's to all of us. And I'm going to frame it this way. Okay, I'm a white guy, so I can hide behind my whiteness.
You're a white guy?
But I'm also marginalized. Yeah, I'm very pale these days. I get into the sun, very pale. But now being an out gay man, I can still hide that because I'm white. I choose not to. That's more political statement on my part.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at these women, when I look at Barack Obama, when I look at people of color, I am not threatened. I have never once felt, oh my God, that person gets in office, they're going to hurt me for what my people did to them. I never thought that.
Me neither.
And I think isn't that strange? Because who would think like that? Who thinks like that? You know,
They have to think that way.
You said they have to think that way?
I mean, why else would they be so opposed to anybody other than a white person?
Oh no, I'm saying that they.
Control.
I know that they think that way because they said it. They've vocalized it. They think that if Black people come to power, then Black people will do everything that was done to them.
Right.
I thought you denied that all that stuff happened. So what's the problem?
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And I stand corrected, Tony. You're correct. They stand to inspire everyone, not just women.
Right. They really do.
Mm-hmm.
They really do. Every war, pretty much throughout history, has been started by men. There may have been 1 or 2 queens here and there who gave, the order to go to war, but the vast majority of war has been started by men.
Well,
it's because men were in power.
Well, I was just going to say, to be fair, men were the ones who were in power. So, of course, that's a true.
Also the ones that fought them. So let's throw that in there a little bit too.
That's right.
But also, I mean, how many times have we heard if you give women, if she gets in the Oval Office, her finger on the nuclear button, and then she has her hormonal change once a month?
Oh, jeez.
There we go.
And people are still saying that.
I know that they're still saying it.
It just blows my mind. Just blows my mind.
Meanwhile, I know that those people that were saying that, I know that their heart was in their throats every friggin' day from January 20th, 2017 until January 20th, 2021.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I think it was a great show. On behalf of myself, my wonderful co-hosts and crew, I thank you for spending the time with us on RaceAware. Don't forget to visit us at raceaware.rocks and make sure to follow us on our platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Until next time, stay safe and race aware, because truth matters.
Politics, protests, human rights, justice, equity, community. RaceAware.